Hello and welcome to the Packaging Digest webinar, the correlation between continuity, supply chain resiliency, and sustainability in healthcare packaging. Today's event is sponsored by Oliver Healthcare Packaging and broadcast by Informa, the owner of Packaging Digest. I'm Lisa Pierce, Executive Editor of Packaging Digest, and I'll be your moderator today. But before we get into this timely topic, we have just a few announcements. This webinar is designed to be interactive. There are icons or widgets at the bottom of your screen that are going to allow you to learn about today's speakers, download resources, share this webinar via social media outlets, and then participate also in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of the presentation. And toward the end of our webinar, we're going to ask you to please complete our survey, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. Please, pretty please, take just a minute to fill this out before leaving us today, because your feedback really does give us valuable information on how we can improve our future events. Lastly, if you experience any technical problems, please click the Help widget, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, or type your issue into the Q&A area, and we will be happy to offer one-on-one assistance there. Now, on to our presentation, the correlation between continuity, supply chain resiliency, and sustainability in healthcare packaging. Discussing today's topic are three experts in healthcare packaging. And just a quick reminder that you can learn a lot more about each of them in the bios widget, but please let me introduce them to you. We have Kylie Jupstrom, Commercial Development Leader at Plastic Ingenuity. Jen Goff, Global Director of Product Strategy at Oliver Healthcare Packaging. And Andrew Green, Market Development Manager for Healthcare Specialty Plastics at Eastman. Jen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you all for attending. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We are really excited to be sharing this information with you that we shared initially at the Kilmer conference in Greece a couple of weeks ago. So really excited to share this information. And first, I want to start out by saying thank you. This group of people and this information that Andrew, Kylie, and I have the privilege of sharing with you would not be possible without this group of people who have helped us get to where we are today. So we have a industry working group called Sustainability and End-of-Life Solutions through the Kilmer Innovations and Packaging group as well. So thank you so much to this team for all of their effort, all of their work, and thank you for trusting us to share this information to represent this amazing work we're all doing. So thank you all for attending. We're really excited to share what we believe is a good solution, a great solution to a big, wicked problem in healthcare packaging around sustainability. I want you to all take a moment and think about a time when maybe you have been asked by an auditor or asked by a regulatory professional, or maybe just a request for more information from a regulatory agency about, you were asked a question and the response you gave was a scientific principle that justified that helped answer the question. And when you provided that, the response you got back was, well, we need more data. I wonder how many of us have worked on that same, provided that same scientific principle and gotten the same response of we need more data at the exact same time, creating what could be considered unnecessary effort by a large group of many medical device manufacturers. And so what we're really doing with this project is challenging the status quo of having to prove through data when the scientific principle should be or could be the appropriate rationale. So I'm going to hand it over to Kylie to help our audience understand how we got to where we are with and how we identified the problem and came up with a potential solution. So Kylie, over to you.
Thank you, Jen, and good morning, everyone. If you're joining us today, I think it's a fair assumption that we all agree plastic is nearly ubiquitous in healthcare, and it plays a key role in the delivery of safe and sterile products to patients around the world. But as the global market of plastics continues to increase and grow, the pressure on healthcare companies to enhance the sustainability of their packaging is intensifying. Hospitals are requesting recycled content in medical device packaging. Legislation seeks to mandate it, and medical device manufacturers seek to utilize it. However, the industry as a whole lacks a clear path given existing standards and perceptions regarding the traceability of PCR. So as our Kilmer team was unpacking this traceability quandary, a common question emerged. When does a change become a change? Where can we prove it? We are not challenging whether or not we need to prove equivalency. We're challenging where we need to prove it and how this can result in agility for the entire healthcare packaging industry. So we're going to take you along our journey to identify challenges and opportunities to advance sustainability for healthcare packaging. We'll start here with laying a high-level foundation of the healthcare packaging supply chain, including the indirect influences on that supply chain that are driving sustainability progress, and share key findings from our industry engagement. So for context, this is a US perspective, considering the demographic of our group is predominantly US-based, with a growing EU presence, we're thrilled to say. And you will see company logos with the sole intention of being relatability. So let's walk through this. We start with resin manufacturing, and traditionally fossil fuels are extracted, refined, and polymerized to produce resin. From there, resin is supplied to either resin converters who convert it into flexible or rigid substrates. And in cases of vertically integrated capabilities, resin is supplied directly to packaging converters. Here, packaging converters use a variety of processes to manufacture sterile plastic packaging. This converted packaging is typically distributed through three channels: the product manufacturer, and increasingly more so, contract manufacturers and contract packagers. From there, we go through distribution and ultimately to our end users and the hospitals. Now, what you'll not notice here is some indirect influences, and those are driving sustainability in healthcare packaging. And those are group purchasing organizations and NGOs. For context, GPOs, just to give you a reference point of the influence, GPOs control over 70% of spending in healthcare for medical devices and 90% for pharmaceuticals. The largest GPO, Vizient, represents over $100 billion in purchasing volume. Sustainability-focused NGOs, such as Practice Green Health, an arm of Healthcare Without Harm, are influencing the value chain as well with sustainable procurement guidance. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for healthcare packaging? Let's unpack that a bit. So healthcare systems and GPOs have developed what they call environmental preferable purchasing criteria to weight sustainability performance metrics as part of their supplier contract award process. This criteria includes giving special consideration to products containing PCR content. You'll see here a couple of examples of how they're incentivizing for PCR content and packaging. Once we've better understood this, we needed to understand the challenges with enabling sustainability in healthcare packaging. We need to understand what are the challenges that those stakeholders face. So 2 years ago, we conducted a survey to understand what's inhibiting what these challenges consist of. From our survey, we identified three common themes. Hospitals have difficulties in collecting and sorting waste. Medical device manufacturers need packaging sustainability guidance and education specific to our industry. And converters have constraints utilizing recycled content due to medical device regulations. Once we identify these challenges, we need to understand what is inhibiting progress, what's inhibiting us from overcoming these hurdles, and what can we learn from other regulated markets. Throughout our journey, we've interviewed stakeholder subject matter experts to dive deeper and better understand these challenges, such as those from a healthcare service provider perspective, how we can accelerate innovation, what we can learn from other markets, and what the business case is for collaboration along the value chain. So from here, Jen is going to walk through our solution brainstorm from our findings. Jen?
Thank you, Kylie. So as you can see, this is a very complex value chain with complex problems throughout, right? So this group of people, we had lots of brainstorming, lots of ideas, but what we really wanted and what we set out to do was do something different. So one of our ideas, for instance, was design guidance. We said, hey, maybe packaging engineers could use some design guidance for what best sustainability practices for healthcare packaging. Fortunately, we have a couple members on our Kilmer team that are also part of HPRC, Healthcare Packaging Recycling Council, and those folks let us know that HPRC actually already has some design guidance and it's currently under revision and being updated. So we said, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at something else. So then we looked at monolayer packaging. Great solution with regard to being able to be recycled, but where it didn't meet the needs was with the end user, the hospitals. When we interviewed hospitals about another, monolayer material that they could sort and then get recycled, they said, please don't give us another waste stream that we have to sort for. We don't have the space. We don't have the appropriate training. And so now, well, I will say there is a caveat. There are hospitals today that can do this. So this is not a complete, I think monolayer packaging is still a very, very smart way to go if your distribution channel is able to accept it and it meets your end user needs. But where we really wanted to focus is meeting needs across that entire value chain. And what we had heard from certain hospitals was, maybe you can focus on something else. So we said, okay, let's look at hauling and sorting. That seems to be a huge challenge within industry. And then we also found out that HPRC is also tackling this big problem. So we said, these are 3 of probably 10 different ideas, but where we ended up landing was we had Andrew Green on our team who introduced us to the technology of advanced recycling, which is not necessarily a new technology, but it is a new technology to healthcare packaging. And advanced recycling is the ability to take mixed plastic waste, break it down to the molecular level into oils, into a new feedstock, and then create monomers and virgin polymers that would ultimately create virgin resin. So an amazing technology that we thought, wow, this really this really solves and tackles problems across this entire value chain. So Andrew is going to take us through advanced recycling technology and get a little deeper into what it means and how it can contribute to the overall problem of sustainability. So Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. And just to frame this up for everyone, advanced recycling, is really best thought of as a family of technologies. It's not referring to just one thing, but actually a lot of different technologies that are aimed at the same objective, which is to increase the number of things that can be recycled and increase the quality of things that come out at the back end of that recycling process. Another quick note on language: advanced recycling includes, other concepts you may have heard: chemical recycling, molecular recycling, and when we in our team on KiiP talk about this concept, we're thinking about, what I personally term molecular recycling. So taking the molecules out of waste products and reusing them to make new durable products, new packaging, new devices, and other things that can be used at the same level and at the same or better quality as what they were originally before they were disposed of. And so one of my big objectives as I talk to people about this topic is to help them appreciate the nuance that's behind all of this. A lot of times when people talk about these technologies, they refer to them monolithically, but I think they're better understood if you can break them down and get a little bit more specific. But first, let's talk about why advanced recycling? What makes advanced recycling or molecular recycling different from the recycling I've been hearing about for the last 40 years? Well, if you think about what is currently serving in most curbside collection systems, you're actually thinking about a mechanical recycling process. You're all very familiar that they're very particular about what you put into those bins because mechanical recycling starts with collecting a very clean source of waste plastic. For example, the PET stream, what is called the Resin Code 1 stream, it's focused on getting clear plastic beverage bottles like those made by your major soda brands as well as water bottles. Those are, if you collect them at a clean source, you can then chop them up and remelt them into new applications and create a new product that is very similar to what you had before. However, that chop and remelt process, it does degrade the quality of the polymer. It shortens the polymer chain, which the length of a polymer is actually very closely tied to how well it performs. And because that polymer is getting shorter and shorter, that's what causes degradation. And so eventually, once you've gone through this process, say 5 or 6 times, you get to a point where you have a material that's no longer suitable for anyone to use, and it has to get landfilled. A molecular recycling process actually works very different. First of all, it can take a broader range of plastic waste. Some of them even take the full gamut of mixed plastic wastes, which reduces the burden at the sortation level at the beginning, and it breaks those down to basic molecules. And by going down to a molecular level, you're actually reducing the plastic back to a virgin feedstock state. And that virgin feedstock can be used to feed existing manufacturing processes to make new product that is the equal or even better use than what it was before it was disposed of. This kind of a process can even take that material that's currently bound for landfill out of the mechanical stream and upgrade it back to new quality. And so there's a really great way that these two technologies can work together, and where molecular recycling technologies can really enhance the benefits that we're getting today from mechanical recycling and move our whole recycling infrastructure much closer to the vision of a circular economy, a circular flow for the materials that we use day in and day out. So maybe this sounds like magic for you. So I want to try and make it very much based in science so that you understand what is the basic theory of how these technologies work. And what it comes down to is the current linear value chain for plastics starts with fossil fuels. It starts with these complex mixtures of hydrocarbons that are rich in the basic raw materials used to make plastics, which are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So think of those 3 basic elements from the periodic table. The entire plastic and chemical industry has grown up around taking those complex mixtures and purifying them into pure feedstocks that can be used to make the full variety of plastics that we use today in packaging, durable goods, in apparel, and other applications. In the medical value chain, it makes the trays that we use, basins, pitchers, bags, tubes. It's used in a variety of different contexts. And what molecular recycling adds to this is, the idea of like, well, what if we wanted to break away from coal, from fossil fuels, and actually use more sustainable materials to make the plastics we need? What we need is a source of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And if we take those fossil fuels out of there, we still have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It's in the chemical structure of these finished plastic goods. And so what if we could collect that waste and reincorporate it into the value stream? That is the role that molecular recycling technologies play. They actually are able to take that waste material instead of fossil fuels and extract from it purified sources of the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules necessary to make the very same plastics we started with. And so it creates a much more circular path to getting the kind of recycling infrastructure that we want, and having the plastic materials that we need to provide safe healthcare to patients around the world. So this is sort of a master chart to kind of connect the various recycling technologies that encompass the concept of advanced recycling, and connect it back to the value chain that they're serving. So those bubbles in the middle are representations of the various steps in the process of taking a fossil fuel and turning it into a plastic ready for consumer use. And then those arrows across the top represent all the different ways that you can reincorporate that material into the value chain. So it starts at the consumer level with reuse, but if the consumer gets to the point that they can't reuse that material, or say it becomes contaminated or degraded by the reuse step, you have to move to the recycling steps. And I'll dig into these specific technologies a little bit more in the middle, but there's a few basic concepts that I want to tease out first. First of all, if you look at these going from right to left, you're talking about going from something that's more of more like a finished product, and working your way back to something that's more and more basic. So starting with a polymer, a finished plastic, moving back to a monomer, which is kind of a component of a plastic polymer, the molecules that make up the monomer, and then finally those mixture of complex hydrocarbons that we currently use to make the molecules used to start all of these processes. And so from right to left, you're just going to more and more basic forms of material. The other thing that you trade off as you move from right to left is the processes on the right use a lot less energy. And the concept there being you want to use as little energy as possible to reuse this material. So you prioritize from right to left on this chart. But the advantage that you get by spending that extra energy on the left end is that when you get to the materials that you can't effectively sort, the materials that are maybe composed of a lot of different types of plastic, or are just really difficult to separate in the waste stream, the things on the left side of this chart are more capable of taking all of those things together and still recovering them and being able to recycle them into useful product once again. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each of these 5 technologies I'm showing that make up the family of advanced recycling technologies. So again, we'll go from right to left just to keep things very clear, and we'll start with the mechanical recycling that we use today. The lowest energy recycling process. You're just chopping and remelting, as I mentioned earlier. If you look at the data, this technology is most effective when you're talking about resins code 1, 2, and 5. So that means PET, high-density polyethylene, and polypropylene. There are effective and scalable models that have been proven to be able to take clean feedstocks of these materials and convert them back into a useful material, at least for a few cycles. So it's a really great way to extend the useful life of a plastic that's already been made. If we step over the line into at least what I consider to be on the molecular recycling end, our first step is dissolution. So this is similar, where we're not reducing the polymer at all, but what we're trying to do is get any impurities out of that polymer stream. So you're still collecting a pure stream of a particular type of polymer. It's mostly targeted today at polypropylene and polystyrene. And what you do here is you'll take that solid form of plastic and you liquefy it. And by liquefying it, it allows all those impurities to fall out of the polymer so that you can then turn it back into a virgin quality polymer that can be used in the variety of different end applications that polypropylene and polystyrene are used today. Taking it a step further, another technology that's really great for the full family of polyesters is depolymerization. And depolymerization is actually taking that polymer chain and breaking it apart into different monomers. So if you think of any plastic polymer as like an actual like metal chain, the monomers are like the links in that chain. And if you can break those monomers out, break out those chain links, you can then use existing processes to put them back together into whatever length you need to get to the performance that is required. I'm going to take a step out here and actually dive a little bit deeper into depolymerization, as this is one of the technologies we have currently in operation at Eastman. And this is an overview of a typical methanolysis process. So it can take a variety of recovered polyesters. So polyester, what is that? Well, it includes things like your beverage bottles, which right now the mechanical stream is looking for the clear beverage bottles. But beyond that, you have your colored bottles. You also have polyesters that are incorporated into other trays and forms that aren't being recycled in that process. It can be incorporated into other mixtures of other plastic materials in a particular type of packaging, but it also includes things like polyester apparel or polyester carpet fiber. All of these things are compatible with this methanolysis depolymerization process. And it starts with purifying, making sure that you have a very pure stream of just that polyester so that you have the highest yield when you go to the central step, which is that depolymerization process. You're taking those polyester chains and you're breaking them back to the two monomers that all polyesters are made out of, which are DMT and MEG. So if you have a purified source of DMT and MEG, you can use existing processes to react them back into finished products, very high quality things like sterile barrier medical packaging, food containers, durable products like things like sports bottles that, like the Nalgene and Camelback brands, as well as very nice high performing packaging for cosmetics and other luxury items. So in essence, this allows you to take a broader number of different materials and convert them into a broad number of different end products. And it does it at a virgin quality. And because you actually have control of how the material is taken apart and then put back together, this allows you to essentially repeat this process indefinitely. And it allows you to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with this by using waste as your feedstock rather than using fossil fuels extracted from the earth. Our next technology that we'll dig in deeper is taking things to an even more basic level. So going beyond the monomer, we're talking about now we're getting back to basic molecules. So the individual elements that will make up those monomers and other materials. And this is where we get to the point where we're collecting a very richly mixed source of waste, plastic, and we're breaking it back down all the way to those basic least common denominator elements, that carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that I mentioned earlier. Gasification to chemicals is another process that Eastman is operating, and it looks a lot like this. You'll take that, you'll mix that into a reforming technology, which will essentially use heat to break all the chemical bonds in that plastic so that you're left with hydrogen, which those combine together into hydrogen gas, as well as carbon and oxygen, which combine into carbon monoxide, which creates a product called synthesis gas. That synthesis gas, any impurities that are in there will get purified out of that. So you have a very pure stream of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which is fed into an existing production process to make a variety of intermediate chemicals as well as high quality end products, including apparel fibers made from cellulosics, things like your eyeglass frames. Many of those are made from cellulosic products, which can be made from this process, as well as, again, a variety of packaging end products. And again, this also provides that circularity path while also being able to focus on a very broad spectrum of different types of materials. So it really opens the door for the number of things that we can recycle in our recycling stream. The last technology that I'll emphasize is a technology called pyrolysis. It's similar to gasification in principle from a standpoint of you're trying to take a rich mixture of different plastics, break those chemical bonds, and reduce it back to a very basic state. And what it produces is a stream of mixed hydrocarbons. And to put it most simply, it's similar to refined crude oil that comes out of the fossil stream. It's a mixture that needs to be purified into the molecules that you need to react again, but it gives you another starting point that came from plastic waste rather than from fossil fuels. All of these technologies together create actually a very robust system of solutions to reincorporate finished product material that has become waste and reincorporate it back into our value chains to displace our reliance on fossil fuels to make these materials, to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts associated with the current production process, and to complement mechanical recycling. In other words, it can bring a lot more investment and attention into scaling our recycling infrastructure further to not only add more options, but to also make our mechanical recycling technologies much more effective. And it does this also by opening up the world of recycled content material to a lot more applications, including sensitive applications. Again, because we're going back to monomers and molecules, you should think of this more of like a virgin source of material. It's a virgin quality material that happens to come from a recovered waste source rather than from a fossil source. And because you have that virgin quality, you have reestablished traceability and can verify the purity required even for those sensitive applications. And this comes into that question of when does a change become a change? Because we can go back to a virgin quality and verify that quality at the feedstock, it really is before that change in the process, the way of getting these molecules becomes a change from, say, a notification of change purpose or a change that is relevant to the end product quality. And that's really the revolution that this really brings forward for people within our industry. And the thing that Kylie, Jen, and I, along with the rest of our Kilmer team, are really trying to create a vision for actually incorporating this to create a more circular value chain for medical packaging. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things back over to Jen to walk things forward.
Thank you, Andrew. So if you're like me, the first time I heard Andrew explain molecular recycling, I got really excited because this seems like such a wonderful solution to a major problem. Of course, there are going to be hurdles, and that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. But what I first want to talk about is the how it meets some of the solutions, or how it is a solution along the full value chain, and how we're taking and incorporating all of that information, all of those survey results, all of those interviews into account when thinking about this as a potential solution. For hospitals, it's going to reduce the need for sorting. It's ease of disposal, meets sustainability purchasing or sustainable purchasing practice, like Kylie talked about earlier. For MDMs, it's a solution for sustainable packaging. So it's cost avoidance from taxation from EPR legislation, extended producer responsibility legislation. So I'm not sure how many are aware, but definitely Europe is leading the charge in extended producer responsibility. So what that means is hospitals not hospitals, but medical device manufacturers are getting charged for selling any non-recyclable plastic waste. There is a tax that they are getting taxed it for a percentage of the total, how much non-recyclable plastic waste they are selling into hospitals. And some of that legislation has started to happen in the United States as well. So that is going to drive all of these medical device manufacturers to put pressure across their organization on finding sustainable solutions, not just in packaging, but also, in devices and other areas of the business. And then when you look at converters, the converters have an opportunity to innovate in this space, to provide sustainable solutions. So we're going to walk through some of the barriers in a moment, but once we get through some of those barriers, the converters are really going to be able to partner with the rest of the stakeholders along the value chain to create and develop solutions that are going to meet the needs and ultimately provide something that is more sustainable. So as Andrew was saying, really advanced recycling, molecular recycling, chemical recycling, a lot of different ways to say it, but it's a win-win. It creates this continuity and supply chain resiliency. And the supply chain resiliency comes from, if you look up, at this graphic here, you see fossil fuels. or fossil resources. That is currently the feedstock for plastics. And what this does is provide another feedstock for plastics. And so therefore, that is going to allow for that supply chain resiliency, meaning that if there is an issue or challenge with getting fossil fuels, we will have other feedstocks through this advanced recycling technology. And then from a continuity perspective, Andrew mentioned there's this continuity of it being able to happen over and over and over again, which is different than mechanical recycling, which degrades the polymers. This is actually something that can continue and create circularity. So as we mentioned, there are some barriers that we need to overcome, and I'm going to walk through some of them now. And these are the barriers that this Kilmer group is working on. In fact, we recently broke up into smaller groups to tackle each one of these barriers and to provide some solutions for people who are interested in identifying advanced recycled material and getting it into their organization. So the first one is end user value proposition. As you can imagine, a new technology like this is typically going to be more expensive due to supply and demand. And so, historically, we've thought, listen, people are interested in sustainability, but no one's really willing to pay for it. And what we've found recently, because of this taxation and extended producer responsibility, that we've found that medical device manufacturers are hungry and are willing to pay more for a technology that can then offset some of those taxes that they are being charged. So we have medical device manufacturers on here, we have suppliers in this group, and we're really looking at what is that value proposition? How does it fit into the overall goals of organizations and their sustainability initiatives? How does it fit into what's the business case to have advanced recycled material in your organization? And so we have a group working on that. The second barrier is regulation. So we've mentioned now multiple times that we are challenging the status quo. We are asking, when does a change become a change? Meaning, typically, we put out material into the medical device industry, and everyone is doing their own testing. Everyone is doing equivalency testing. If you can imagine how, and that's kind of how we opened, is the redundancy, the inefficiency of everyone doing the exact same testing has got to be solved. And we think we can solve this at the regulatory level. So we are partnering, there's another group working to partner with folks that are responsible for ISO standards, ASTM standards, because we feel that if we can get this language and proof of equivalency earlier on in the process and get that into some of our standards and documents, it will be an easy button for our industry to point to say, this is equivalent, this is the process, this is the scientific principle that we are using, and it's in, referenced here in ISO or referenced here in ASTM. So that group is looking to partner with those type other organizations to get this technology better understood. And then also, when you think about the FDA, BSI, TUV, DECRA, all of the different regulatory agencies, working with them as well. We currently now have someone on our team from BSI who we hope to understand how can we inform and educate our regulatory bodies so that they are aware of this technology as well and the standards that show that equivalency. Third is manufacturing readiness through ISCC Plus certification. So there is this concept of mass balance, which means someone, somewhere, some entity is going to have to manage how much waste is being put into the system and how much is being taken out and have traceability, because at the end of the day, we want to make circularity without making other problems, right? We want to ensure that we have traceability of all of these materials to then prove that you're actually getting advanced recycled, to prove the circularity ultimately. So the certification is needed all along the value chain, from the very left to the very right. And so we're trying to understand certification versus license. What does that mean? So we can create a comprehensive whether it's a document or education for the industry to, again, adopt this certification, get this certification. And I don't want this to sound too daunting, because at the end of the day, this is traceability. Our industry, from a medical device perspective, we are really great at traceability. So this is really, it doesn't take much change within current systems. It's just proving that you have the systems to do it. This is more, if you think about food, or maybe food isn't a good example, but consumer, they may have, not as robust of traceability systems as we're already required to have in the medical device industry. So another group is working on that. And then lastly, industry education, which is starting with conversations like this, or presentations like this, I should say. Taking all of this information, creating robust education, ensuring that the right people get it when they need it to make informed decisions, and helping people understand the difference between mechanical recycling and advanced recycling. I think, we've thrown out the word, just saying recycling in general, people already think, oh, not virgin material, I can't use it. So, just the language matters as well. So trying to ensure that people understand what this technology is, why it meets some amazing solutions across the value chain, and creating some robust education around it. So with all of the people on the call today, we are very open to hearing your feedback with regard to education and really in any of these areas. So feel free, I think Kylie, myself, Andrews, our LinkedIn was on the first or second page, so you have access to that. Feel free to message us and ask us any questions there as far as getting involved or feedback on how we can get this message out more broadly. And really, the goal is, again, to provide best solutions for sustainability within healthcare packaging. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to Andrew. Thank you to Kylie. Thank you to that amazing Kilmer Innovations and Packaging group. We all have done a tremendous amount of work, and we're all really excited to share this. So feel free, again, like I said, to ask any questions privately or through I think Lisa's going to help you understand how to do it through this platform. So thanks again.
Jen, Kylie, Andrew, what an excellent, clear, and concise explanation of a pretty complex topic that has a lot of potential for healthcare packaging. So thank you so much for that. We've gotten some great questions already, but before we get into the Q&A portion, just a friendly reminder to please take our webinar survey, which is available at the right of your presentation window. If you closed the survey, no worries. You can reopen the widget by clicking the icon along the bottom of your screen. And thank you in advance for filling out that form. Your feedback is going to allow us to serve you much better in the future. So thank you for that. And so now on to our Q&A portion, which I absolutely love the Q&A portion of webinars. So we're going to start, just a quick reminder too, if you have, we've gotten a lot of questions, but if you have any more, to add your question, just type your question into the box, the text box that's located to the right of your presentation window, or you can click that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And if we're not able to get to all the, I think we have enough time, but if we're not able to get to all the questions that have been submitted already, we're going to be sure to share them with the speakers who can then reply to you offline. So our first question, are GPOs excited to hear about advanced recycling? What has been the feedback from them so far?
I can jump in here. Certainly, I've gotten heard very positive things from GPOs, and specifically because I've heard very positive things from the ultimate customer, which are the hospitals. One of the stories that stuck with me when I first started in learning about the medical packaging waste problem is a friend of mine who is a physician at a teaching hospital talked about how every student who comes in is shocked at the amount of packaging they have to throw away. And they invariably ask, can we recycle this? And so there's a great desire by people coming into the industry, as well as the nursing staff and facility staff who are seeing this waste problem with their very eyes. And when you tell them that there is potentially a solution to not only address that waste problem, but actually to make it a new starting point for medical packaging, medical device resins, as well as a number of other materials, there is a great level of excitement and energy. And of course, the questions are, how do we get involved? How do we integrate it? And those are some of the bigger problems, the bigger questions that our team here in Kilmer are trying to address, so that the exciting potential of these technologies can be realized for the GPOs and for the hospitals they serve.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Any other adding on to that? If not, I can go on to the next question. I'll go on to the next question. Is there a percentage of material loss during the process of advanced recycling?
So I'll hop in again here. So every process has a yield loss, so that's to be expected, whether you're starting from a virgin a fossil source or from a recycled source. But many of these technologies have very high yields. I can speak more specifically to the processes that Eastman has. The depolymerization process we have, has a very high yield. There's over 90% of the material roughly gets reincorporated into finished product, into a new plastic, which is very high, and that allows us to have the very to move toward a closed loop. And of course, we're talking about, in terms of operating these things at scale, we're just getting into the first generation, and so there's the future also potential to improve that yield and to further increase the amount of materials that we capture. But it's also why I think it's important to look at these technologies individually, because they all have different capabilities and their yield levels will be different. Their impacts will be different. And I think it's helpful to understand both the technologies at a high level, but also what is the operator of that technology doing to make it more environmentally friendly. I mean, is their goal to actually progress the advanced recycling industry as we're trying to do at Eastman? Or is their goal kind of to cash in on having this recycling claim? And I'm not throwing anyone under the bus there, because I think everybody involved in this industry is trying to move things forward. But you should be asking, really, really good questions of your suppliers to understand their process and to know what that impact is, so that you can compare it to other potential paths you have for reincorporating the material that you use, and for understanding the impact of the various recycling technologies that are out there.
Thank you, Andrew. There are some questions with interest to hear more about KiiP. And one of them is there a cost to become a member as an organization to KiiP?
Yeah, I can take that. Oh, it looks like there's some feedback. Yeah, so no, that is something that is not needed. In fact, if you're interested in joining Kilmer, all that is necessary is a note to Kylie and I. We co-lead the sustainability group. There's actually 4 other arms within Kilmer Innovation and Packaging where they're tackling other large problems. And we have a group on LinkedIn, so Kilmer Innovations and Packaging on LinkedIn. Feel free to join that group, look through some of the content there. And if sustainability is something you're passionate about, feel free to reach out to Kylie and I. And it's just a quick conversation. And the one thing that we are trying to avoid is people that are joining the group to just kind of listen. We do expect everyone to kind of pull up their sleeves and do some work. But the thing that we've found with this group of people is everyone is very passionate about the work that they're doing and willing to contribute. So we're really grateful for that. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to Kylie and I.
Thank you, Jen. There are a lot of healthcare companies, medical device companies that are very interested in what's going on around the world. And we have one person asking, is molecular recycling being done around the world? And are there a lot of companies able to do this, or just a select few?
So this is happening around the world. Particular interest I have observed in North America and in Europe, but essentially anywhere. I have heard a lot about announcements in Asia as well. I mean, anywhere that you have plastic production, there is the potential to scale up this technology, the potential need. In terms of who is doing it, from my observation, all of the major plastics manufacturers are trying to find a way to incorporate this, because plastic companies like the one I work for, they're made up of people who are aware of these issues, who care about these issues, engineers, scientists who want to solve these problems. And, and that's creating a lot of will and interest in investing in these things. And now with the level of end user support, customer and consumer support, to use this in place of fossil technologies, which today are cheaper to operate, but have a higher impact. The investment is being made around the world to make sure these are available to collect the waste wherever it's being generated and reincorporate it at the place where it can be manufactured into a new durable good. So, I mean, I think that the only limitation is really the balance of our own ability to innovate as people, as scientists, as well as the chemical pathways that exist by taking a material, breaking it down in this way, and the pathway to bringing that back into a new product. So there's massive potential. Eastman is just one of many companies who is moving in this direction, and the vision is to have an advanced recycling infrastructure that is global in nature and able to meet the needs of this global problem.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew, for clearing that up. We do have another question about a different type of limits, perhaps. What about the classification of operating OR waste to biohazardous waste, which I understand does not allow packaging material recycling?
So another great question. This one certainly runs into a lot of the logistics questions that both this Kilmer team has contemplated, as well as the Healthcare Plastics Recycling Council, as they're thinking about setting up a reverse logistics system that helps you incorporate this. What's great about these technologies in terms of their potential is that they create fewer issues in terms of like the handling of certain types of waste that you can't touch, if you're using like a traditional mechanical process where you don't have the ability to clean, to sanitize, and to remove impurities. But the sort of organic waste that contaminates these materials in hospitals, is potentially something that can be addressed by the combination of this technology and a safe and effective system for moving that contaminated waste to these recycling systems. And of course, there's the regulatory angle there, which may be the most complex issue to work out. How do you set up a good regulatory system to ensure people do this safely and you don't have negative impacts to human health and the people in the communities where this material is being moved and reincorporated? The other thing I want to point out is that the vast majority of waste in a hospital is clean from contamination. And that's because there's a huge incentive to make sure you don't need to incinerate it, that you don't need to use a more expensive way of disposing of it. So an incinerator costs you about at least 10 times as much to dispose of waste by incineration. So if you can avoid keeping that material from getting contaminated and needing that incineration, you have a real cost savings play for your waste management within your hospital. And so there's already really good behaviors to try and retain as much of this as uncontaminated waste. But there are also potential solutions to increase the number of those different waste streams that can actually be reincorporated with a technology like this.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know, Andrew, but it also is important then that knowledge is then shared with the hospital staff the knowledge that you are doing advanced recycling, and further educating them on what that means for what else they can do as far as recycling in the hospitals. Okay.
Lisa, that's a good point. And just, one point of clarification, when we talked about industry education, it isn't necessarily just packaging engineers that, would benefit from the education, but along that entire value chain, having education platforms and opportunity for information to be shared broadly. So great point.
Exactly, yes. And the other thing that I was really glad that Andrew mentioned was the move toward having advanced recycling becoming an infrastructure rather than just closed loop systems that only some locations can do or not do. So that's really good news. Another question about KiiP. A lot of interest in KiiP. So when joining KiiP, is it predominantly meant for Americans or also for Europeans?
I can chime in here, Lisa. So first off, I love this question. As I mentioned when we walked through that value chain, we started through a U.S. lens simply because that the demographic of our group is predominantly U.S. based. The fantastic thing has been that as we've grown, we've gotten more European presence, and it has provided great perspective. And I think it's fair to assume that packaging being developed in the U.S. needs to be developed through a global lens. That means that we need to understand, what are the marketability implications for your product in different geographies. So legislation in Europe, like the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive in the EU that seeks to mandate utilization of PCR, for example, that should be top of mind for those developing packaging for medical devices in the US. So we welcome anyone and everyone, and just to really give some kudos to some of the Europeans on our team. We meet on Friday mornings in the U.S. So it's about 7 a.m. I think on Pacific time, and evening for some of our European counterparts. And that just goes to show you the passion that we have on this team and what is really propelling our progress.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Kylie. Yes, there is passion. I've heard that word several times already connected to the KiiP group, and you can see it through the posts that you guys have on LinkedIn. So thank you for that. Okay, a question here is looking at comparative, so mechanical recycling versus advanced recycling. Regarding mechanical recycling degradation, how does this degrading affect PET, and how can that be detected at the converter level?
Sure. So, PET, is maybe one of the ones that that gets the most attention. It's one of the biggest and most advanced of the mechanical recycling streams in terms of investment there. And typically what we find is that it can go through about 5 or 6 times through the mechanical recycling process until it's degraded to a point where no one can use it. And so how is that really detected? It really comes down to, the converters, they see a meaningful difference in terms of how the material performs. So things like, how does it flow through our, whether we're doing a injection molding or a blow molding or a thermoforming process. And as the material degrades, it doesn't perform quite as well. It doesn't flow through the system quite as well. And as it's processed into an end product, you have more failures. The material doesn't perform as well. It's not as strong. And the more and more that polymer gets chopped up, and those PET polymer chains get degraded by heat and chopping, the worse and worse those problems become. So eventually it gets to the point where your failure rate is creating a cost that's too high to make this a useful feedstock for your material. So again, but coming back to thinking about how that PET interacts with something like a methanolysis process, the PET, even after it's degraded, is still made up of those same monomers. They're just in shorter chains. The depolymerization process can just finish breaking those apart and then build them back up into chains of the original chain length that gives us the performance we need in both basic bottle polymer PET as well as advanced PETs like the PETG commonly used in medical trays.
Thank you, Andrew, for the explanation on that. We have so many great questions left, but unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for the webinar today. I want to give a big thank you to our speakers, Jen, Kylie, and Andrew. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise on today's topic. Thank you to our sponsor, Oliver Healthcare Packaging, for supporting medical packaging education and making this webinar possible. Lastly, a hearty thank you to everyone in the audience. We really appreciate your attention, your time, and your participation. Within the next 24 hours, you're going to receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation that can be viewed on demand. Please feel free to share this with your colleagues, and your peers, invite them to listen in if they haven't been able to attend the live event here. This webinar is copyright 2022 by Informa. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Informa Markets. The individual speakers, though, are solely responsible for their content and opinions. I'm Lisa Pierce with Packaging Digest. Thanks again for your time and have a great rest of your day.